The first 3 weeks of pregnancy include the 2 weeks after your period begins and fertilization of the egg. The sperm and egg unite to form a single cell called a zygote. The cell divides to form a cluster of cells that travels down the fallopian tube to the uterus. During week 4 of pregnancy, the single-cell zygote divides many times to form a ball of cells with an inner group and an outer shell known as a blastocyst. The blastocyst reaches the uterus and within a couple of days implants itself in the wall. During week 5 of pregnancy, or 3 weeks after conception, the dividing cells of the embryo form a disc which folds into 3 layers. These layers are the beginnings of the organization of cells that will develop into all of the organs and tissues of the human body. A groove forms down the center of the disc, which now has a top and bottom, front and back, and left and right side. This neural groove deepens and then forms a tube, which will develop into the brain and spinal cord. An early circulatory system develops from tubes on the left and right side of the groove. The tubes merge, kink, and fuse together to form the chambers of the heart, which will begin to beat and pump blood. The central nervous system is also developing, and the gastrointestinal tract begins to form. Simultaneously, the surrounding environment is also changing to nourish, protect, and support this development. During week 6 of pregnancy, or 4 weeks after conception, the neural groove down the center of the embryo closes like a zipper, forming a tube that becomes the spinal cord and brain. The closing is faster toward the head end as the different parts of the brain develop. The ends of the groove then close. The heart now beats and pumps blood. Other organs and facial features are becoming more defined. Tiny buds appear that will become arms and legs. The embryo starts to take on the shape of a C. Its skin is so thin it is transparent. It is about 1/8 of an inch long. During week 7 of pregnancy, or 5 weeks after conception, the brain is developing rapidly, with the 5 main sections established. The face is also quickly developing, and eye lenses, earbuds, and nostrils become visible. The arms and legs continue to grow with paddle-like shapes where the hands and feet will be. The main branches of the lungs are developing. The embryo is 1/4 of an inch long. During week 8 of pregnancy, or 6 weeks after conception, the embryo's facial features are becoming more defined as the brain grows to support the senses, such as vision and hearing. The cerebral cortex in the brain has developed, and all the cranial nerves which emerge from the brain are in place. The arms and legs are growing longer, and joint development is underway. Blood is forming in the liver. The intestines are developing and fill the base of the umbilical cord. The embryo's C-shaped trunk is beginning to straighten. It is about 1/2 inch long. During week 9 of pregnancy, or 7 weeks after conception, bones have begun to form. The embryo's arms are growing and can bend at the elbows. The legs, hands, and head can move. Toes are beginning to form, and upper and lower eyelids are in place. The heart has 4 chambers and is nearly complete. Production of cerebrospinal fluid has begun. The embryo can hiccup. It is close to 3/4 of an inch long. During week 10 of pregnancy, or 8 weeks after conception, all the vital organs are in place, along with fingers and toes. The genitals are forming, and development of the skeleton is underway. The embryo's head is becoming rounder. The hands are beginning to touch the face, and the hands and feet begin to touch each other. The end of this week marks a change from the embryonic to the fetal period of development, that is, the transition from an embryo to a fetus. The fetal stage lasts until birth. During week 11 of pregnancy, or 9 weeks after conception, the placenta is providing nourishment that enables the fetus to start growing more rapidly. Red blood cells are beginning to form in the liver. The external genitals become visible. The fetus can now sigh, stretch, open its mouth and move its tongue. It drinks fluid and there is movement in the small intestine. The fetus is about 2 inches long. Week 12, or 10 weeks after conception, is generally considered the last week of the first trimester. The fetus has developed fingernails and toenails. The corpus callosum, which connects the right and left sides of the brain, has begun to develop. The intestines are moving from the umbilical cord into the abdomen. The fetus now yawns. It is nearly 3 inches long and weighs about ½ an ounce. At 13 to 18 weeks, 11 to 16 weeks after conception, all the baby's nerves, organs, and muscles are functioning. The immune system, sex organs, and respiration are developing. The skin is forming distinct layers, and the baby is developing fat stores. Its ears stick out of its head. At 19 to 25 weeks, 17 to 23 weeks after conception, downy hair covers the developing baby's body. Melanin production begins. The developing baby can swallow and suck. Its sense of taste and touch have developed, and it responds to sounds. Eyebrows and eyelashes can be seen, and the hands are fully developed. The third trimester begins at 26 weeks. At 26 to 30 weeks, 24 to 28 weeks after conception, the eyes are open and fully developed. They can sense light and produce tears. Brain weight increases 4 to 5-fold. The lungs begin breathing-like movement. The baby begins to store minerals to help bones grow strong. At 31 to 36 weeks, 29 to 34 weeks after conception, the baby's skin is red and crinkled. Rapid weight gain continues and fat deposits round out the baby. The baby's lungs are almost fully developed. The fingernails reach the ends of its fingertips. At 37 to 40 weeks, 35 to 38 weeks after conception, the baby's lungs are mature and it can grasp something. The baby has enough fat to maintain a normal, consistent body temperature. The baby is now considered full term and normal gestation ends. When a woman is pregnant, her pelvis begins to tip backwards as the baby develops to balance the forward weight of the expanding uterus. As the pubic and tailbones move backward, the arch in the lower back increases. As the lower back arch increases, so does the curve in the upper back or thorax. The shoulders and head move forward and the chest collapses to balance the changing weight. All these changes can increase stress on the spine, exaggerating its natural S shape. Other muscles and ligaments can also be strained. Amniocentesis is a medical procedure performed during pregnancy to obtain a small amount of fluid from the amniotic sac. The amniotic sac and fluid surround and protect the fetus. Live skin cells from the fetus are shed into the fluid. An amniocentesis test is performed with ultrasound to guide the procedure and avoid harming the fetus. The fluid is obtained by inserting a fine needle through the abdomen into the uterus and withdrawing a small amount of amniotic fluid. Examining DNA from skin cells in the fluid can identify a genetic disorder or chromosome abnormality, such as Down syndrome. Amniocentesis is usually performed between the 16th and 20th weeks of pregnancy. Diastasis recti means separation of the paired rectus abdominis muscles, which run lengthwise down the front of your abdomen. This can occur during pregnancy when the muscles stretch to accommodate the developing baby. The connective tissue between the muscles stretches and thins as the enlarged uterus distends the belly wall outward. After delivery, abdominal fat can press outward because the muscles are still lax and weak. This creates a so-called pooch in the lower abdomen. A woman becomes pregnant when one of her eggs is fertilized by sperm. Normally, once an egg has been fertilized, it moves down a fallopian tube to the uterus or womb. It implants itself in the uterine wall and is now an embryo. In an ectopic pregnancy, the fertilized egg implants itself outside the uterus because damage, scarring, or distortion of the fallopian tubes leaves it unable to pass easily into the uterus. Implantation in a fallopian tube is called a tubal pregnancy, or the egg may implant itself in an ovary, the abdomen, or the cervix. Whatever the site of implantation, an ectopic pregnancy cannot continue to birth. If the embryo continues to develop, the tube or organ containing it will eventually burst, a potentially life-threatening emergency. The risk of an ectopic pregnancy is increased by tube infections, surgery inside the abdomen, fertility medications at the time of fertilization, and a prior ectopic pregnancy. An ectopic pregnancy is usually identified during the first 5 to 10 weeks of pregnancy. Causing symptoms of abdominal and pelvic pain and vaginal bleeding, it may be confused with a miscarriage. How the developing cells are removed depends on their location and size. A cesarean or C-section means a baby is delivered through an incision in the abdomen rather than through the vagina. The incision is usually horizontal and just above the pubic hairline, but may also be done vertically from the belly button downwards. A C-section may be planned if a problem birth is suspected, or used as an emergency procedure if unexpected problems arise. The baby and placenta are delivered from the uterus and the incisions are closed with stitches. As with all major surgeries, there are risks with this procedure. Before birth, the baby grows and develops in the uterus or womb. The birthing process begins with regular contractions of the uterus and dilation or opening of the cervix, the narrow opening where the uterus joins the vagina. When the cervix is fully dilated at 10 centimeters, around 4 inches, uterine contractions become stronger and more frequent. The baby goes through a series of passive movements, especially the head. Birth stations indicate how low the baby's head can be felt in the mother's pelvis. The baby's head then begins its passage out of the vagina, called crowning. Labor continues as the baby's head and body pass out of the womb and vagina.